Alright, so in this video, I just wanted to go back and reminisce on some random games that happened this year here in the 2023 college football season. I kind of did a variation of this earlier, maybe a month ago, and just talked about random college football games over the past decade, and I still might do a part two to it, but this is just, these are all ranked matchups, and I'm sure some people forgot that some of these games even existed just because they happened earlier in the season, they're random. I just like going over them. And let's begin with a week one game. Arkansas State, Oklahoma. So this actually started a long process where Oklahoma won this game 73 to nothing, which is just a total trouncing. And because Arkansas State is not an FCS team, beating really any FBS team 73 to nothing is going to just, light up the analytics. So that's why Oklahoma became this team that was adored analytically because they destroyed Arkansas State. I mean, there's winning by 30 against its bad team and then winning by 73 to nothing. And again, it's not like Arkansas State is this horrifically bad FCS team, so that's kind of why the analytics loved them. Just kind of a funny little wrinkle there that happened in week one. This was a week two game. Yes, the non-conference matchup, Oregon visiting Texas Tech. Oh, this was a brutal game because I had Texas Tech plus 8.5. How did they not cover? And this is where I started to get angry with Oregon. But yeah, this was kind of a weird game. Texas Tech came into the year. People had Texas Tech ranked. And then they had that weird week one game where they were at Wyoming and they lost to Wyoming. And that kind of just destroyed their season right there. It's unfortunate what happened to Texas Tech. Their season could have played out a lot differently if they didn't have an injury and if they would have won in week one against Wyoming. I mean, think about it. They win in week one against Wyoming, a game that went to overtime. Imagine if they win and then they beat Oregon at home. They're like a top 15 team at that point going into week three. It's really a shame. And they finished their season losing 57-7. But you know what? I had Texas Tech plus 7.5, not plus 8.5, because I would have won if it was plus 8.5. It was plus 7.5. Just very annoying. This was a weird week three SEC matchup between South Carolina and Georgia. And this is why I like games early in the season. Not that they don't matter, but when teams get off to slow starts, like Georgia started 0-5 against the spread. They were losing 14-3 to South Carolina. And just looking back on it, it's just so ridiculous. Like none of it matters early in the season, honestly, as long as you win the game. They come back and they end up scoring 21 unanswered and winning 24-14. That was when like people thought Carson Beck really wasn't that good. Georgia was they were trying to replace some pieces and kind of struggling early on, but evidently it did not matter considering where they are now. How could I not include this game? What a strange environment overall. Alabama playing a non-conference game on the road at South Florida, but the game's at Raymond James Stadium because South Florida's home stadium is an NFL stadium, and you've got Alabama. People were speculating possibly disciplining Jalen Milroe for something, so he wasn't playing. You had Ty Simpson, Tyler Buckner, the transfer from Notre Dame. How many sacks did Ty Simpson take in this game? Like, they started Tyler Buckner, then they had that weird lightning delay where they could only show the camera from, like, up above. This game was just so strange, and then Alabama just ran the ball. South Florida's quarterback had, like, 28 pass attempts and had like 80 total yards. I mean, it's just horrifically bad. But yeah, just a weird game where there's a big lightning delay. It was a 3:30 start. It was raining early throughout. And then they kind of had like two half times because of the lightning delay and the thunderstorms or whatever. Alabama ends up winning. Just a very strange game overall. How about Wyoming, Texas? Not many people remember this one. I don't know if this game was on the Longhorn Network, but it would be poetic if it actually was. This game was Texas's hangover after beating Alabama because they faced Alabama week 2. They got the huge road win by 10 points, and then they faced Wyoming, and Texas was really not good in this game, but no one really watched it, and Texas scored like an avalanche of 3 touchdowns back to back to back late in the third and early in the fourth, so it ended up being kind of a blowout. But yeah, Quinn Ewers was not efficient at all. He had like 130 total yards of passing on like 28 attempts or something, or 21 attempts, something like that. Just not good. Oh my goodness, how could you forget this game? This might be like the highest rated 10 o'clock window game in history. Colorado State, the highest rated game of week 3. Now, week 3 was notoriously bad. There were like no real good matchups, but I can't believe a game that starts at 10 o'clock Eastern was the highest rated game. It just never happens. And yeah, I mean, these teams hated each other. You had Travis Hunter go out on that hit. They were trying to cancel the safety. Remember when people started tweeting at the Colorado State safety after the hit on Travis Hunter? I mean, people just take college football way too serious. I'm sorry, but this was a really, really fun game. It really was, and Colorado comes back to win late. This was the peak of Colorado football. Rest in peace. They were ranked 18th. I mean, this wasn't even a good win, though. Colorado State is not a good team. Beating them in double overtime, that should raise some red flags, but there was just so much hype surrounding that program, it really didn't matter. This was Penn State's whiteout. Man, what a disappointing whiteout for Penn State. You really have to feel bad. Fox has completely ruined Penn State's whiteout games because they're greedy and they're obsessed with Big Noon. And every time Penn State faces Michigan or Ohio State at home, the game is at noon. So they have to put their whiteout game a different week. It was really early in the season. If I'm Penn State, I don't like scheduling the whiteout game early in the season. I would rather it be like week 7 or week 8. I think this was week 4, and they were facing Iowa. And looking back, I mean, this turned out to be a pretty good win considering Iowa's 10-2. I'm kind of kidding. I mean, Iowa is what they are. They beat a bunch of horrible teams in the Big Ten West. They obviously have no offense, but this game was a trouncing. This was when Cade McNamara suffered the season-ending injury. He was really bad when he was playing. He was like 5 of 14 for 40 yards. Penn State just has a really good defense. They can suffocate pretty much every team outside of Michigan and Ohio State, which is a problem for them, of course, but that was a really boring game. That was a shutout victory. Oh, it's the peak of Duke football. Who remembers Duke versus Notre Dame? Saturday night, 7:30 ABC game. It looked like Duke was going to win. You had the 4th and 16 conversion by Notre Dame. Imagine if Notre Dame would have actually lost this game. They would have finished 8-4 on the year. But, I mean, finishing 9-3 is pretty respectable for them. Duke's season completely... Well, I mean, Duke at this point, what a sad year for them. They start off 4-0. They probably should have been 5-0 with a win over Notre Dame, and they probably would have been like a top 12 team. They end up losing Riley Leonard. He's injured throughout the season, and then they lose their head coach after finishing 7-5 because of all the injuries. It's so sad to see. It really is. This is probably the most irrelevant ranked game of the entire year. So Fresno State at this point is ranked number 25. Nevada is unranked, and it's just completely irrelevant. This game took place at 10:30 at night. A lot of people probably didn't even know Fresno State was ranked, and that's just my pick for the most irrelevant game involving a ranked team. Kind of a weird thing there, but I just saw that game and I was like, I don't even remember this game existed. And then this was weird when Penn State faced UMass in like week 7, like a non-conference game. Kind of just a strange thing there. This was right before the Ohio State game, and it feels like Penn State plays in so many rain games, especially at home. It's always raining there. They end up winning that game 63-0. This was a hilarious game. Oklahoma State, ranked number 15 in the country, faces a 4-5 UCF team and gets throttled. And I picked UCF to win this game outright. And when I saw the jerseys they were wearing, like the light blue, the powder blue color, oh, I knew they were winning this game for sure. And they win 45-3 against the number 15 team. Pretty crazy. Ohio State, Minnesota. This was a strange game. It felt like this was an exhibition game, like it didn't matter. Felt like Ohio State really wasn't trying that much just because, you know, the next week they were facing Michigan. They were 30-point favorites or whatever. Minnesota just had a really down season. I was looking at analytics, and apparently they were one of the most disappointing teams of the year. And I don't know, this was like a weird time where Ohio State was on Big Ten Network this late in the year. Normally they're never on it. It was a 4 o'clock start time. And yeah, it was just a really just lackluster game for being late in the year, really irrelevant. And then this game, LSU versus Georgia State, Jaden Daniels, the best performance of the year. If you look at like average per play, he had 6 passing touchdowns and like 430 passing yards, and then 100 rush yards and 2 touchdowns. Jaden Daniels just had ridiculous stats. And if there is one player that signifies why you should get transfer portal QBs, it's Jaden Daniels. Now, I know LSU, they never won the SEC with him. They had 3 losses this year, but they got him as a transfer from Arizona State. with 2 years of experience already. So there's really no need to break in a quarterback, kind of like Ohio State did with Kyle McCord. There's no need to do that nowadays. Just go get a solid transfer who's already got experience. Now he plays with really good receivers, and look at what Jayden Daniels' numbers this year were just ridiculous, and it helps that the LSU defense is terrible because he has to keep passing and being in these games because of how bad the defense is. Kind of like Dwayne Haskins with Ohio State back in 2018. They had such a horrible defense. That's why he threw for just so many yards. But either way, those are just some random games throughout the season that I just wanted to talk about. That's going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.